Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Deepesh Karnatak from Ultria, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our today's webinar, Why Contract Matters to High Growth Company. We would give it some more time for our lovely audience to join in. I again thank everyone for joining in. We would be starting the webinar in another minute or so. Awesome. I think most of the people have joined in. So again, thank you everyone for joining in. Today's webinar is about why contract matters to high growth companies. So I will start things off. Usually for high growth companies, contract often seems like a necessary evil. Uh, for anybody, building the product is exciting, hiring new colleagues is rewarding, and closing deals is exhilarating. But paperwork, trust me, nobody wakes up in the morning thinking about, we're going to draft a contract there or we're going to author a contract there. Well, except the lawyers. But in today's webinar, we will try to present how contract can become an essential building block for your organization's success when managed properly with due diligence. So we have an action-packed agenda today, as always. We will start things off with the speaker's introduction. We will then have a discussion around the CLM values and change management, which will include a scalability model and CLM benefits, both financial and non-financial. And then we'll look particularly at how technology will help you realize the return on investment on implementing an AI-led CLM solution. We would also look at the key learnings and recommendation, and in the end, we will have the opportunity for a Q&A session with our audience. You can post your questions in the Q&A section, and we will answer them in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. As a housekeeping process, we'll also be sending you the recording of this webinar and a handbook, which will contain all the materials which we have covered in today's webinar. So starting off, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Jay Fielding. Jay leads the enterprise consulting team in North America for Ultria. With over 3 decades of experience, Jay is considered a trusted advisor by clients. He evangelized the power of AI-driven CLM solutions to create collaborative culture that brings together all the functions in an organization on a common platform. I did introduce myself at the start, but let me tell you more about myself. I work as a mid-sized solution consultant with Ultria. I have over 10 years of experience in strategic consulting, helping organizations implement digital strategies and digital initiatives like CLM. I also had the privilege to conduct several education programs with the legal team of my clients about the power of CLM and its strategic impact on the organization. Moving ahead, people in the audience who are attending our webinar for the first time, let me give you a short introduction about Ultria. We develop and license AI-powered contract lifecycle management and contract analysis solution. We are hosted on the cloud, multilingual, and globally deployed. Ultria CLM embraces the full contract lifecycle from request to renewal. We are focused towards automating and optimizing legal and contract operations. We cater to all contract domain, which includes legal, sales, intellectual property, employment, procurement, etc. Since our inception in 2016, we are working with almost every industry vertical you can think of. Some of the stellar customer profiles are on your screen at the moment. Since we started working with so many industry verticals, we realized that with evolving process, the tools and technology used in today's world by our client should also evolve. We created this maturity and scalability model based on that. As you all know, that the contracting process traditionally used to be completely manual one. We then began to see the intervention of word processing and other areas that began to create automation. We began to create opportunity for people to start building stores of their contract, accessing them electronically, that led to the development of formal contract repository, where the manual and the automated were blended. Automated drafting was the next phase, which began to enable much more in the ways of workflows, the collaborative activity between different stakeholders, redlining, passing of contract, and much more. But of course, the critical point of having contract is not only about their integrity as a business instrument, but also the performance of the contract, which of course, where the economic benefit comes from. There have been growing focus around how we actually take this more life cycle based and not just about creating the document instrument itself, but also ensuring its communication out to the relevant people and monitoring the performance under it. Moving up ahead, the most matured stage will have integrated process where the CLM system will be tightly integrated with the other enterprise solutions like your CRM or your ERP with a two-way data exchange. Now let's go ahead and run a poll to understand where our audience members are in their digital transformation journey. Are they at the manual stage where you have paper files, or maybe you have outsourced opportunities to somebody else? Are you at the basic stage where you have a document management solution, or maybe you have recently implemented a basic CMS or a basic CLM, or you have started to deploy your own AI engine, you have an amazing AI team, or you have gone into the transformative stage, which is where you're deploying domain-specific AI. So I will put up the polls on screen, and I would like the audience member to participate in this poll. So we'll give it a few seconds, and we'll see the results after that. 5 more seconds to everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for answering the poll. I will end the poll right here. And the results are here. So we have been doing this for a while, but this may be the best number we have seen in terms of, the basic folks are, and the intelligent folks are, at the same range, which in our previous webinars, we have seen that it was almost around 60%. So we have seen that the people are actually moving towards the AI deployment, and it is absolutely wonderful to see, and it's the right trend which we are going in. So now let's understand where the impact is when certain things are not in place. Let's just take a couple of user scenarios. So we'll start with Alice. Perhaps she is a legal counsel. She's spending almost 3 days a week working on contract. Does she want to spend her time writing NDA from scratch? Of course not. And now she's looking at a way for her to know what the GC approved and how to leverage that as a baseline every time. Or we'll take the example of Emma, someone in sales operation who is generating 10 to 12 contracts every week. And she's literally doing that by hand. And she sent them for a legal review, and sometimes they are not coming back out. And maybe she is hard pressed to understand where they exactly are. Or let's take the example of Brandon, who's the GC, who's overseeing many different workflow and work stream across multiple people, companies, division, teams. And he's realizing how much time is wasted for all the talent he has brought on board that are simply trying to figure out which version of the document is the most current one. So they are fighting something which we call as virginitis every day. Or we can look at the folks who are sort of next to the contracting process. Let's look at John, who's the HR director, want to send employment agreement out to the new hires. He has got all the key metrics for bringing people on board as soon as possible, but it's taking 4 to 5 days for him to send that offer to the candidate. And Lord knows how much more time it's taking for the candidate to sign it and send it back to him. We can also look at the example of a chief financial officer who may be preparing for a merger and acquisition. Can you imagine how hard it will be for him to understand what consistencies might show up in the due diligence process because he doesn't have the accurate contract analytics? So all of this is just a small indicator of where there are solution gaps and how this impact your internal stakeholders as well as those stakeholders who are externally your team, but very important to the organization. And these people are also impacted. And you will trust me, the impact is a lot larger that you may expect. I'm going to show that in the next coming slide. But in order to put together the beginning of a business case, we need to really start with the numbers. So how many kind of contracts do you really have? We often think that we just have sell side contracts and buy side contracts. But if you think there are a lot of other things which are effectively contracts. So let me give you an example. Even if you are not in a geography where employees sign employment contracts, you may have things like confidentiality agreement or the practice, the ethical business practice agreement or equal opportunity hiring agreement. So all of these are effectively agreements between two parties. So it should be a part of a contract management platform. And if you add this to your non-disclosure agreements that you sign with every vendor and probably half of your prospects, the quantity of the contract managed in a year can get pretty large. So take the different kind of contracts you have and then add them up. You will know what kind of quantity of contracts you are handling per year. And then based on that, you can also get to know about the average value of the contracts. It also lets you figure out what is the average value of these contracts managed in a year. And then when it comes to improving the process of getting contracts signed, we will want to be able to understand the average life cycle length from the intake of a request to the execution. And you may want to go a little bit further and figure out how long your contract actually live in the post-execution world. Finally, what is the average contract failure rate and what is the financial impact? So that this could be your sell-side agreements or your buy-side agreements. Lack of revenue or loss of revenue can be just as painful as additional overpayments or penalties as it's related to the vendor. Now let's talk about the benefit bucket of an AI-powered contract management platform. This gets me really excited. So we have got increased compliances and process efficiency. Let's talk more about them. So using an AI machine learning to assist contract evaluation and drafting can save your time, can save your efforts, and it just makes your contract more compliant and risk-free. So this could be simply by pre-configured automated review workflows, having your CLM to do the first level cut based on your minimum requirements and using the same threshold to set triggers and notification to bring in the right people at the right time. Again, using the data from these contracts to drive better internal compliance to procedures, being able to use the same information to also run the right risk model against the contract to route it to compliance check, provide inputs to your comprehensive risk analytic tool is also the benefit of using a domain-specific AI for your analytics. And of course, using the same capabilities to run ongoing monitoring to your contract, they have been executed, leveraging the power of expected milestones that are pre-configured in the system and tracking key performance metrics. Being able to provide real visibility through the post and pre-sign process is also additional benefit. So we have seen a recent survey of outsourcing supplier that are those sort of LPOs and equivalent kind of firms that the closed contract governance business could stand to lose up to 40% of the contracting value, which is a very huge number. Now, as you look at the efficiency, there are a couple of features within the Ultria AI CLM that provide operational efficiency throughout the process. So let's look at them. Having an integrated connect to Microsoft Word to bring in template, clause, and we also have a guided authoring information. To provide standardized contract templates that have been pre-approved with alternate template frameworks available throughout, and it is available both through the browser or through your authoring environment. Like I prefer to author any of the contracts which is there with me through Microsoft Word. So having pre-approved contract clause library with alternate and the ability to provide guided suggestions, this is basically leveraging your playbook. And then do you take the third-party contract? How do you take it? Can your system at the moment deassemble it? So with the Ultria AI CLM capabilities, we can actually deassemble it, extract the metadata, each and every content of the contract, and understand the risky clause as well. To provide automated workflow to enable fast-track reviews, increase accountability, as well as maintain version control and audit history throughout the review and approval process. And now let's look at the financial benefit, labor saving due to process efficiency, as well as expanded value either by increased saving or by increased revenue. So let's just take a typical case study. I'm going to grab a company by the name Acme Roller Skates. Let's say we have got a mythical team made up of 4 core categories. So we have the attorneys, we have the non-attorneys, we have the sales rep, and we have the support staff. You could also see the hours per week they spend on contract management and also the list of responsibilities which are associated with them. So based on that, we get an average loaded cost of each and every core team. We at the moment, you would see here that for the attorney and non-attorney, you have the hourly numbers, and for the sales and support staff, you have the annual numbers. Now, moving ahead, where it's get interesting part is that you could see the improvement a contract lifecycle management system can bring to these individual tasks. But to look at that, first we'll have to understand what is the cost which is going at the moment. So now what you could see in these infographics and the data around is the estimated pre-award and post-award hours spent per role, and also hours spent in different stages of contract management, like the intake of the contract, authoring, review, negotiation, and other activities. Now we're going to talk about the improvement and savings in hours and dollars. That's the best thing to talk about. The implementation of an AI-led CLM solution can save out a lot of hours for you and a lot of dollars for you. So you may see an overall average of around 27 to 30% improvement in the hours spent in different contract management stages, and almost $1.9 million in saving if we convert these saved hours into dollars in just pre-award process. So this is just the pre-award. Let's go into the post-award. So almost the same number here in the post-award as well. The average improvement is close to 30%. And this, if you convert the same, the saving is almost $2.6 billion. So now we actually look at these numbers, and here what the surprise is that if you look at the total savings by implementing an AI-enabled CLM solution, it's close to $4.5 million, which is a lot of amount for any company. Now we look at the labor saving and efficiency. We look at the ability to relocate these, we can reassign them or re-engage them, these team members to different tasks. This will enable you to send less work outside or to the outside agency. This will also enable your business team. They will start delivering more in a short cycle time, which will lead to more fully supported revenue resilience. Now moving ahead, you would also see that apart from your internal numbers and saving, it is also worthwhile to go and look at the external equivalent, what it might have been. So if I'm using inside people and I'm relocating them to the task that used to go outside, This is an opportunity of cost saving in its truest and the most mathematical viable form. There's also financial benefit tied to expansion. When we say expansion, what we're really talking about is the ability to get more with sale. So the payback rate is conservatively at about 200% within 1 year. Your legal team will spend 20% less hours in managing contract and will be able to handle 25% more contracts in a year. It also reduced sales operation cost and also faster time to value for saving and revenue. So now that I've explained the impact, the financial and non-financial benefit of a AI-led CLM solution, basically Ultria CLM solution, I would request Jay to please share with our lovely audience how technology and tools can actually help in saving cost and increasing revenue. Jay, over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Deepesh. That was very, very interesting. Today, more than ever, managers are requiring stakeholders to show financial impact of decisions to make procurements. And with contracts, it's something that they could get immediate results. Now, I should mention that our calculator is not just being developed by ourselves to help improve sales. The information that we use to create the algorithms and the calculations are coming from companies like the International Association of Contract and Commercial Managers, ACC, the in-house council, Gartner, Forrester, and other organizations like Goldman Sachs. So the numbers that you plug in and get out are going to be accurate industry standard reports that you could present to management with some security that you're presenting real potential numbers. So let's move into the technology aspect, and let's go to the next slide. And first, we're going to talk about leadership. Today, leadership wants to be involved in the contract management area because they're understanding how important contracts impact their business requirements, even if they're not day-to-day involved in anything but the very large contracts. So we're talking about chief purchasing officers, general counsels, CEOs, chief operating officers, vice president of manufacturing, sales, etc. So what are they looking for? As you could see some of the benefits up there, but we're going to talk about a couple of them. One is strategic growth and savings. For mergers and acquisitions, for example, or entering in new markets, they want to prove out to their stakeholders that they're actually producing the results that they said if they invest in mergers and acquisitions. And through your contracts, they could see what cash flow they have coming in, what spend is going out, and they could collaborate and bring those numbers into financial reconciliations and be able to prove out savings and growth. Another big area is risk and compliance management. Today, more than ever, we've seen the pandemic impact every company in the world. Supply chains have been frozen, and many times looking at contracts and understanding where you can reduce exposure or from your customers who are wanting to reduce their sales to you, or you with your suppliers, you can't meet all the commitments because your employees are working in-house, or the orders are going lower than expected and you don't need as much supply. So our artificial intelligence solution was used by our customers to really dig in and find out how they could protect themselves. And right now, that is a very big part of everyday contract management. The final area I want to mention for leadership is contract data intelligence. The ability to use metadata as well as contract information coming in, terms and conditions, et cetera, in order to really understand what's happening in the business and where it's going. What am I purchasing? Where am I spending? And how I could reconcile that to the actual transactions that I'm finding in my ERP, my CRMs, and my procure to pay. So let's go to the next place. The next slide is a dashboard. one of the great technologies that we offer our clients, and we know others do too, is the dashboard. Now, let's call the dashboard a personalized, rapid visual delivery of KPIs. What you want to do is have each role or each level of management be able to look at a dashboard and find out what's most critical to them, alerts and notifications. What potentially is happening for big dollar sales that CO is looking at? Why is it being held up for 2 weeks? Well, they need to be able to see it and drill into it to find out where things are. Or a commodity manager looking at 5 different purchasing. They want to know whether the contracts have been approved, when they're up for renewal, et cetera, et cetera. So with our dashboard, each person can create reports and put them into the graphics that mean something to them, meaningful searches, and find out, what's out there that affects their business immediately with visual presentation. So let's go to the next slide. That's one. And when we look at stakeholder benefits, one of the things that we have found is resources are very slim when you have companies that are always upgrading an ERP or procure to pay. And we found that many times contract lifecycle management is very important, but it's secondary to the company's main business systems. So a lot of time purchasing and procure project managers are not available for CLM. So with us, we have something that we could really help you with by having one central system for procurement, human resources, sales systems that could be on one platform. We are able to reduce the amount of work effort for your thing. We call it one and done. Once we get up and running, Ultria takes over. It's on a software as a service cloud model. So we can deliver in days, if not weeks, rather than months and years of in-house systems. We could also provide the ability to interface with systems. We have a Salesforce interface, for example, or a Microsoft Dynamics. We have one account that has 25 sales reps clicking a button and creating sales contracts that are going to legal for approval and cutting down the time frame from 1 week to 1 minute to get their sales contracts out by the type of technology we're offering. So the idea is to centralize and be able to have one system that everyone could use where all the contracts are, yet each stakeholder can personalize the workflows, the templates, the security to their own business. Next slide, please. One of the things that our clients asked us when we got into this market is they wanted to extend metadata. When you have SharePoints and other filing systems, many times you have 2 or 3 or 4 different ways you could file something and improve the ability to find different contracts for different suppliers over different timeframes or different customers. But with us, what we've done is integrate in with Outlook. So we've taken the ability to ask wizard-based questions right in the very system that people are now requesting contracts. But instead of all the back and forth that comes, we can now ask questions, say, what contract are you looking for? What type? And from there, all the questions below it will change, enabling us to collect the needed information to produce a best first draft of that contract with the requirements needed for that workflow. For example, different states are going to have different clauses and different requirements. Or maybe now you're doing business internationally and some of the goods and services you're buying are coming from the Ukraine or Russia, where there's a major, event happening. So you need specialized clauses to protect the organization. All that could be captured at the request behind the scenes and set up automatically to the best first draft and kick off the appropriate workflow based on all the metadata. But we've done something further. We've interfaced in with your source systems. We've taken companies that are now interested in Salesforce because many of them have it, or at Microsoft Dynamics, SAP, Ariba. And from just a couple of clicks right from their software, a purchasing agent can create a master service agreement, an SOW, an NDA, and get it out the door with all the metadata already that's in the system because they've already inputted it. So you don't have to do it multiple times. We're eliminating redundant data entry, and we're creating the workflow automatically. So let's go to the next slide and see where we do it. One of the other areas that we've done is we wanted to have intuitive interfaces that allow people to work in the environments that they're working, as we just mentioned, whether it's SAP, Ariba, or Coupa, or Zycus, or whatever company you're working with in your sales or ERP or CRM. But Word is also the major editor that everybody uses today. We very rarely find someone who's not using it. But if you aren't using it, don't worry about it. We can still work with you with our CLM system. But if you notice on top, you'll see that there's now an Ultria button for users of our system who are licensed. They can have all the major tools. They can check in documents and check out documents directly to the cloud. So instead of all these siloed things, where's the contract? Well, it's on somebody's desktop and it's stuck in there with the wrong version. Now you can track the audit trails of all your contracts, even though they're edited in Word. You have on the left side, you could see the metadata. You can make adjustments or add metadata to the contract right in Word. Or on the right side, you can kick off a workflow or approve a contract, or you can add clauses into the contract. You can use Word to create a totally new contract based on bringing in clauses that you've already had pre-approved by legal or your VPs or whoever owns that particular clause. And or you can look at a new third-party contract and adjust it and compare it to your clauses right in Word. Okay, next, please. Another major advantage of our tool right now is we mentioned how important risk and compliance is. Well, what we were told by our customers is the main area that they have risk is, of course, with third-party paper. If you think about it, if you create your own templates and clauses and you already go through all the process of reviewing them and having your attorneys look at them and your management look at them, if a company is requiring you to create a template for them, it's all pre-approved until they start redlining and editing and negotiating with you. But what about a third-party contract coming in? You may or may not have seen it. So what we do is we automatically bring that contract in, and based on the AI, the artificial intelligence, ours is called Orbit, it's kind of pretty cool. Ours is called Orbit. It will know that it's a master service agreement, an NDA, a partnership agreement, an IP licensing agreement, whatever contract is, it'll know that on the left side, what metadata is required for that contract to be brought in. It'll go in and extract it automatically, get the contract set up, and then initiate the workflow. Who's the first person that gets these type of contract based on the dollar amount of the contract, the date of the contract, who's the person who manages that particular customer or that particular supplier? Is it an IT contract, needs to go to IT? All that could come in automatically and be routed to the right person. That's what makes this so amazing. But what about risk? With our system, you could look at it and it'll say, how does this compare to the template? Which clauses are added that I don't have in my template? Which clauses are missing? Or if I have that clause, let's say a limitation of liability, how does it compare? So we could do all of that up front to give guidance to the legal department, the VPs looking at it to know how to quickly access the contract and know where they need to look to shorten the time period. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, we'll take a look at a very important part of contract lifecycle management is conditional workflow. Conditional workflows mean you can set up a very simple workflow. If I'm using my own template, and it's going to be filled in with the different metadata and the rules and regulations. I can send it on a predefined, shortlisted people who approve, sign, and get it out the door and negotiate. But what if the metadata changes? Let's say the dollar value of the contract increases. We all hope that when we're selling something, we can now sell more. Maybe they've changed their mind. Instead of 10 users, they want 100 users, or instead of 1,000 parts, they want 10,000 parts. Oftentimes, different levels of management need to review contracts that have been changed. Maybe it's going to the Ukraine now instead of being shipped to the main office in New Jersey. And now you have to have special reviewers. Well, our system can automatically have that built in. And so with conditional workflows, you can establish routings that are immediately modified based on the metadata. So that's the way to save time, streamline. Also, you should know that our system tracks the complete traveling, everything that's done to a contract, timed, stamped, and who is doing it. So you know where a contract is. If a contract gets bottlenecked, it can have automatic alerts and notifications to make sure it keeps moving. Maybe a particular person forgot to mention to the system that they were going on vacation, or maybe they had a family emergency and they're not there to review the contract. Well, is there somebody that could be escalated to? Well, yes, if you go in and look and go to their desk and find the contract, and then you could do it. But what if you automatically had that in the system, that if it's not reviewed in 2 days, it automatically sends an escalation to the system administrator to reroute the contract to another particular individual that's noted? Okay, so these are the kind of things that we can streamline and make more efficient without burying you in work. We could put it all into the system and then have it work. So next slide, please. So this is the final slide we're going to talk about. And we talked about the data intelligence requirements of companies. So we have basically 2 types of data intelligence. One is system. How do we make sure that the contract lifecycle management system that you implemented is working for you? Let's say your clauses are being edited very frequently. Well, you may want to take that default clause and modify it to what you're now agreeing to anyway when you're basically editing it and negotiating with your customers. So it no longer has to be edited. It goes through as a default clause. Or you might find that there's a particular person in the routing that takes too much time, and you need to say, hey, look, you're holding up the process. What can we do to help you to keep the routing going smoothly? A myriad of reports, all based on helping the system administrator and your people make sure that all the contracts, whether it's sales, human resources, licensing, legal, are getting through the system and doing it. The second part of it is data coming from the contracts itself. Our system allows you to search every metadata item with this or that, with options, is it greater than or equal to, contains, etc. And so we really work on expanding your metadata. One, we started, as we mentioned, through the request process, making sure that you have a good list of metadata. What is required to get the contract started? Each person in the workflow could be asked to add additional data to the workflow, that to the contract for metadata, or we automatically pull it off of the contract through our AI tool. But you can now search on it. We do free text search, and we also allow you to enter in alerts and notifications and milestones into it, so you could report on just about anything you want. So this is something that a system will do for you. We've shown you now the ability to have a dashboard where you can find your most critical points, the ability to work in Word or Outlook, the ability to expand your metadata, the ability to find leadership, top benefits that they cannot get if you're just using a SharePoint or a document management system, that are really very important, critical. and that we could be one system for every type of stakeholder, and you could still personalize it using their procure to pay or their CRM or Word or Outlook, etc. So we thank you, and Deepesh, back to you.
Thank you so much, Jay. That was very important information what you gave it to our audience. Now I will take it forward, and the next thing is again another poll. So I will quickly publish and launch this poll. You guys will have 30 seconds. I will just read out the poll, which is which area of your contract lifecycle management process needs improvement at the most. So is it the requesting and drafting? Is it the review and approval? Is it your negotiation and sign off? Is it your reporting and analytics? Or is it your compliance and obligation management? Or is it everything? So please look into the
Deepesh, the poll that actually came up has to do with metadata, and it's just as important to our prospects. And, you know, where are you using metadata, and where do you need additional metadata? And that's just as important a question. We apologize. We had a couple of different polls in mind and we crisscrossed them, but they're both important. So we thank you for completing the one that's in front of you.
Oh, yes. So as I could see the poll, so the question have changed. Has the metadata become an effective tool for contracting? Is it filling search relativity? Is it template assembly? Is it workflows? Or it is analytics? So thank you so much, everyone, for answering. We will just close the poll now. And
you have some questions?
And you would see the result. Yes, we have a couple of questions. Just wanted to tell you that approximately 57 people have selected analytics. So that is something which is, you know, an effective tool for contract monitoring. Great. So again, we have one question from Hillary, which is, can you demonstrate Ultria? We would definitely love to do that. What I can do is that after this session, we can reach out to you and we can set up a demo for you about the Ultria CLM, give you more information about it. Now, moving ahead, I would like to personally thank you everyone for attending this webinar with us. And, you know, I have already answered one question. There's another one which has come. So I would let Jay take this. Jay, could you please share more about your AI? Does it handles both internal and third-party paper?
Right. Just to let everybody know this, we started with artificial intelligence in 2007. Our whole company has been designed around artificial intelligence, for example, with master data management for the onboarding of parts and items and being able to take hundreds of thousands, if not millions of line items and consolidate them, duplicate them and deduplicate them and classify them. We've applied this same technology to contracts. So we could now very quickly in seconds look at a contract and be able to identify it as a master service agreement, a sales contract, or, you know, an SOW or an IT services contract. So that's one of the ways we're using AI. The second is to pull out the metadata from third-party paper. And the third is, as that third-party paper is coming in, to immediately review risk factors that each organization is set up for this master service agreement. The risk factors are, you know, the dates or the insurance, etc. So our system will be trained on your requirements when we set up the system, so it'll be part of the implementation. The other part is we could use it as a batch tool. So with the pandemic came, our customer said, look, I need to go through 2,000 contracts and find force majeure type clauses, or maybe I want to find all the contracts that are shipping to a particular part of the world right now that maybe they're are having problems with the pandemic or with supply chain, etc. So we can work our AI tool inside the system or as a batch tool, creating value for you and your analytics. Thank you, Deepesh.
Thank you, Jay. So thank you so much once again, everyone, for joining the webinar. That is the time what we have. And if we couldn't answer your questions, In the allowed time, we will reach out to you via email or phone. I would also suggest everyone to visit our website and look at our cost saving calculator, because that will give you the appropriate idea based on your business case, based on the people who are there in the organization. And for any other relevant information, you can reach out to us via our email info@ultria.com, or you can visit our website as well. So thank you so much for
Thank you
joining
very
today's
much.
session. Yes.